Did you know that I'm a little bit psychic? I can predict that some of you this afternoon are going to be happy, and some of you this afternoon are going to be grumpy. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know who's going to talk to you. I don't know a lot about your life, but I know some of you are going to be extra happy, and some of you are going to be extra cranky. You know why? Because there's a game today. There's a Chiefs game today, and I walked by someone in the parking lot that was not from Kansas City. I am guessing that your other team we've got going on here today has blue, right? Because there was a blue hat, and they were like, Kansas City's ours today, but tomorrow you can have it back. And, well, I was just walking by that conversation, but that's not a trigger for me. See, that just blows right through my mind. It just goes right in one side and goes right out the other. And my afternoon is going to be the same no matter what. Like, no matter what happens, except that I'll be a little happier for you that you're really happy, or I'll be a little bit like, this is so funny that we get unhappy, right? But I bring this up because this is the topic in Michael Singer's book, Living Untethered. We are in our third Sundays of this series, and you haven't missed anything. If you have missed this so far, you're fine today. Don't worry about it. Don't feel like you have to catch up. You can get everything that you need for your divine appointment right here today. And if you want to catch up and find out what we talked about the last couple of weeks, because this book is incredible, then you can check on the app or on our YouTube for the talks for the last couple of weeks. But essentially, this week is about the mind and what happens in the mind and learning the mind. And those of you that are Chiefs fans, you have a big preference, don't you, about today? A big preference. And that preference is that the Chiefs win. Go Chiefs, right? High five out there. But it's a funny thing because you might as well be happy either way, because you choose to engage in this thing called sports, right? And you love it, right? But you also use it to make you happy and miserable. You use it to make you smile and make you cranky. And that's what Michael Singer's talking about this week in this section. We do that all the time. That's what the mind does. So can we just sign on for it and understand that and be less disappointed when the things that get us cranky start happening, and less attached when the things that are good that we want to happen, less holding on to them. And when we do this, when we can find this sweet spot in between, we can flow with the motions, like people that recognize that if everyone didn't come together to play sports, I couldn't get cranky and happy. So great. Someone's going to be cranky today and someone's going to be happy. Let's play with that and let's enjoy that we played the game. Yeah? Maybe not. Maybe you're not there yet. Okay. That's okay. That's okay. We'll work with that. We'll work with that. So the idea in Michael Singer's book is that we have cravings and aversions. He talks about the butterflies as being those things that were like, ooh, do you remember when we went to downtown Kansas City for the Royals and everyone dressed in blue and it was like the entire downtown was blue? You remember that? Right? And then we have rattlesnakes, which are aversions. Like, I don't check much into sports, but I do have an idea that that blue thing is not going on right now or hasn't been for the last couple of years. Because I've checked in, like, where's all the fun? I'm not hearing us talk about the fun. Let's go downtown. And everyone's like, that's not happening right now. So, aversion, that's the rattlesnake. Now, if you're not into sports, think about this. If you are a cat lover or dog lover and you get a new cat, I was house sitting once for someone that had a cat, and I love cats, and I was like, I would love to house sit for you, for your cat. And she said, well, just, sometimes she can get a little saucy, and just be mindful of that. Well, I came into the house and I go to feed the cat. I'm trying to get into the kitchen to get the cat's food, and like, here's the counter and here's me. And every time I try to walk into, the cat tries to get me, like tries to claw me from the counter. Like it knows where to sit so you can't get in there. And it is not liking me, regardless if it's a friendly cat, but it's not friendly towards me. And it keeps like, reaching out to claw. And, all of a sudden I'm like, this is not what I was thinking, I was thinking I'm going to come and I'm going to cuddle your cat. I'm going to snuggle your cat. I'm going to give your cat food. Now I think your cat might be starving by the time you get home because I can't get to the food because your cat is trying to kill me. So imagine if you get a cat and you're really excited about having a cat and you get that cat home and that cat is a scratch cat. It scratches you. It tries to bite you. It wakes you up at night. It claws on your furniture. It pees on your couch, on your chair, wherever, right? Rattlesnakes, butterflies. You had an idea of what it would be like to have a cat. It is not these things. Same thing with a dog, right? Say you're a dog lover. I was walking by someone on a hike who had 2 dogs, and we got to talking about the dogs, and I could tell she was a little stressed. I could tell she was a little bit not liking her own dogs. And she said something about how they got these dogs, because their other dog had passed, and their other dog was such a good dog. And these are the same kind of dog, but they're a lot of work. And I could tell she would love if someone was like, I've always wanted to have 2 dogs just like that. Could I take them? And they'll have the best home they're ever going to have. Would you be okay with that? She'd be like, go, beloveds, go. I want my house back. Why? Because there was a butterfly in her mind. And that butterfly was that beloved dog. The one she was so in love with, so attached to. And these little spunky fellas, well, they could not match up. Has anyone had relationships like that? You got one good one, and guess what? Everybody else. I might not say it, but somewhere in my mind there's a computer system. Somewhere in my mind there is a registering, not passing the bar. And that's what we do. That's part of the human condition, right? That's part of the human condition. And it drives us crazy until we learn what is driving us. So until we begin to understand ourselves at a deeper level and understand the mind, we are driven crazy by it. And Michael Singer does an awesome job about talking about how brilliant the mind is. He talks about Einstein, and he talks about the brain, and he talks about humans and how we're different from animals as far as we know. And he says that, we have all these capacities in our minds. There's so much we're capable of. And, Einstein and all these people took on something to contemplate and think about. And what do we often sit here and put in our minds in this lifetime? Relationships, drama, finance issues. Am I going to do this? Do I want this? Oh, I don't want this. Oh, but I want that. Oh, I want this. Oh, get that away. Oh, I want to be near them. That feels good. Oh, I don't want any more of that. Oh, this is so good. Oh, that's so awful. All the while, we have this brilliant brain sitting here going, you could use me for amazing things. You could use me for miracles. You could tune into space travel. You could write songs. You could do all sorts of incredible things. You could paint paintings. You could do just about anything if you just give me a little space in there. But instead, we do the dance. Push it away, pull it back. Nope, push that away, pull it back. So this is the practice. The practice is recognizing that there's a game today. There's a game this afternoon. And that's a good thing. I can let myself experience it and show up for this experience of life. And sometimes that experience is going to look good, and sometimes it's not going to look good. Sometimes it's going to feel good, and sometimes it's not going to feel good. Sometimes my thoughts about it, I'm going to have a history of build up a little volcano inside, and it's going to be like, ooh, you just hit a mark here on my inner volcano, and it doesn't feel good. And that's okay. And the more we can understand ourselves and recognize that, the more free we can be, and the more we can free this mind. But it doesn't happen until we get something called beginner's mind. That's the idea of this in Buddhism. They call it the beginner's mind. Some people call it the empty mind. Charles Fillmore probably called it the silence or realization. But it's that space where you tune into what our co-founder Charles Fillmore described as being the space beyond. He calls it the crucible. But it's the mind that isn't programmed and patterned. It doesn't have the computer programming on it, right? If the computer programming's on it, then whatever has happened, and if you know anything about psychology, generally look in year 0 to year 8 of your life, and something happened. You had some experience, some paradigm that taught you something, and ever since then, you've been adding on to it, like making a little volcano. Like, let's put some more rocks in the volcano. How about some lava in there? And then you build this thing up, and then the rest of our lives is spent reacting, going, yep, there's just one more bit of evidence that I'm not good enough. There's just one more piece of evidence that I'm not lovable. There's one more validation that the world isn't fair or good. You fill in the blank. And we build that, and then as adults, we spend much of our time dealing with our own inner volcano, saying that the world is on fire. Charles Fillmore talks about the superconscious mind and the levels and phases of mind and consciousness. But he says, the superconscious mind, it is well said that the mind is the crucible in which the ideal is transmuted into the real. So the mind is the crucible in which the ideal is transmuted into the real. It can also be the crucible in which hell comes to earth or heaven comes to earth. He says this process of transformation is the spiritual chemistry we must learn before we are ready to work intelligently in the great laboratory of the Father's substance. There is no lack of material there to form what we will, and we can draw on it as a resource according to our purpose. Wealth of consciousness will express itself in wealth of manifestation. He goes on to talk about the realms of mind, and he talks about the consciousness, the subconsciousness, the superconsciousness. What he calls the superconsciousness is divine mind. Call it what you want, but it's that realm of incredible ideas. It's that time when you get something or you feel something so much greater than you are. You know you're connected to a greater whole. It's that mind that crazy scientists solve major issues with, and mathematicians get equations out of nowhere. They just like pull them out of the ethers. Then he talks about the subconscious mind, because the computer programming can be in the subconscious mind. He said the subconscious mind is the vast silent realm that lies back of the conscious mind and between it and the superconsciousness. To one who does not understand the nature and its office, it is the great gulf fixed between his present state and the attainment of his highest desire, his good. He says in Keep a True Lent, when we seek the superconsciousness and make a conscious connection with it, we harmonize all of the forces of mind and body. We lift up the subconscious until a complete conscious unification of the three phases of mind is effected, and we have become established in singleness of heart. I'm going to share one more quote from Keep a True Lent. He says, the subconscious may be called the sensitive plate of mind. Its true office is to receive impressions from the superconscious and to reproduce them on the canvas of the conscious mind. So that's what Charles Fillmore says. The role of it is to receive impressions from the superconsciousness. Now, did you train your body to make your heart beat? Did you have to learn that? Do we have like pre-K in that? What about to make our, think, move my finger? Did you have to train your body to do that, or did you just have to think it, right? That would be an impression from the divine intelligence, right? The divine intelligence created these systems, it emerged, and it is incredible, and it does so much. Fillmore, Unity's co-founder, says the mind is supposed to receive these impressions from the superconscious mind. Often, though, it receives the impressions from these cravings and aversions. And then we operate from there. trying to dodge things and grab things, rather than receiving the impressions from source and bringing them into fruition, creating from them. Again, we have brilliant minds. What are we doing with them? He says, man, however, having lost the consciousness of the indwelling Father as an ever-present reality, has reversed the process and impresses the subconscious from the conscious mind. So Fillmore's, and he was born before psychology was really invented, which is just incredible. But he's saying there is a reversal of the process. He's saying what we know in psychology, which is you have these experiences. You can go through a baby or child development psychology and you can see these things happen, X, Y, Z. That's what it forms inside. We bring the outer into the inner and then we live from there. Charles Fillmore is saying we have it backwards. When we're on the spiritual path and when we're in the practice, notice and know that's how this intelligent system works. But we have to become operators in that. And we become operators by tuning in and knowing that we have a super conscious mind and that, in fact, it can go in the opposite direction. The imprint can. Now, once, we're here on the planet and living, we have the imprint, so we've got to deal with that, right? Because it's real. We have cravings and aversions. And we begin to have aversions to things that seem related to things that they may not be. So it's kind of like Halloween's coming up. It's like a bunch of spooky ghosts, but there's nothing really scary there. But the body and the brain and the system recognizes, oh, that looks like the rattlesnake. Or maybe this new puppy is going to be the new butterfly. There's nothing wrong with the puppy. There's a lot of people that adopt animals that pee on things and bite, right? They totally do it. It's like their passion, right? They take care of animals that no one else would want. That's the right animal for them. There's nothing wrong with that animal. What's wrong is the attachment I'm not aware of inside, right? If I'm aware of what I am craving and I'm spending my whole life doing this, or can I just be present and show up? And we'll go into the empty mind a little more. But he says this, we've reversed the process. In this way, the former is made to register impressions of both good and evil, both error and goodness. And when he says evil, Charles Fillmore defines evil as just being the absence of good. It's not a force in and of itself. It's our kind of ignorance. It's just our ignorance. According to the thoughts held in conscious mind at the time the impression is made. He says, in truth, there is but one mind. In it, all things exist. Accurately speaking, man does not have three minds, nor does he have even one mind, but he expresses the one mind in a multitude of ways. He goes on to say that the superconsciousness is the goal towards which humanity is working. Regardless of appearances, there is an upward trend continually active through all of creation. So we're talking about the realm of divine ideas. Now, Michael Singer does not go into the superconscious mind. As a lot of Zen philosophies do, they leave us in the spaciousness, in the emptiness, in the void, where anything can be, where we have cleared the negative impressions. And that's the truth of the practice, is that there's nothing we have to do, right? Just like the breath. There's nothing we have to learn. There's nothing we have to force to get more God. All Godness is right here. When we just peel off the layers of our rattlesnakes and our butterflies, our cravings and aversions. And you might be asking yourself, why the butterflies? I want to keep the butterflies, and I thought unity was all about keeping the butterflies, isn't it? Isn't it about, like, living in monarch season all the time? It may be, but not from that same state of awareness or consciousness. Not from craving and aversion, not from pulling, but from faith. So Charles and Myrtle Fillmore activated 5 principles that we call Unity's 5 basic principles. One was the law of mind action. The law of mind action is that you are a magnet, right? Our thoughts create our reality, that we are interactive in our universe. Stuff is not just happening to us, but it's happening in and through us, right? And as us. But he didn't stop there, right? So when we put that layer of like, okay, we oftentimes in unity take that to go, okay, so let me get rid of my garbage thinking, right? And let me just put all the good thinking in there. But then what can happen a lot of times in unity is that we get all the good thinking in there. We're like, I am a butterfly catcher, I am a butterfly chaser, and we've got a bunch of dead butterflies in a butterfly nest. That was not a great analogy to give, but you know those, but I'm not a fan of catching animals, but like those jars in the summer where you get the fireflies and a butterfly net. I have a little one, right? And I want her to experience all those little joys of life. And I'm still like, all the time, I'm like, there's a butterfly net. And I'm like, yeah, we don't really want to catch them. And then there's a fishing hook. And I'm like, I just take the worm and I just roll it over the top of the hook. And I call it fish feeding. We are feeding the fish. And the same thing with the fireflies in jars. We can put it in a jar, but we can't put a top on it because it has to be able to go. But we sometimes suffocate the good because we misunderstand the law of mind action. It's not about, let me draw my good, draw my good, draw my good. Because Charles Fillmore didn't only talk about the law of mind action, he also talked about the 12 powers. And the 12 powers of man, woman, human are things like life, intelligence, power, wisdom, strength, faith. So these divine faculties needing to be raised and embodied within a being were critical. And that is what works with the principles and the law of mind action. And you actually need that faith and that wisdom, because the faith is what, when you have the empty mind and the beginner's mind and the clear mind, when you've moved yourself into these states through the practice, that you can stop being a magnet for craving aversion. Faith is what shows us a different kind of good that's there, right? It's the joy, but not the joy that's like, I'm going to be happy if good things happen and I'm going to be sad if bad things happen. It's the joy of Advent season, the kind of joy that's the one that doesn't have an opposite. And so that's what we're moving into when we move into the practice. I want to share a little bit from Michael Singer. He says, your consciousness has the ability to be aware of things that machines can't detect, thoughts and emotions. These objects of consciousness surely exist, but not in what we define as the physical world. Our scientists have shown us that the whole universe comes down to energy. Thoughts and emotions are simply energy vibrations at such high rates that machines can't detect them. He goes on to talking about how someday we may be able to detect these things and we may be able to see these things. Buddhists talk about the empty mind. When we use the term mind, we're talking about a field of energy with nothing in it. There are no thoughts. There is just an absolutely still, formless field of energy we call mind. That's what Charles and Myrtle Fillmore practiced in the beginnings of unity. It wasn't that they just practiced the law of mind action without practicing the silence. And it's that wisdom and the faith that comes through practicing the silence, comes through getting an empty mind, that actually allows us to co-create and to receive the impressions from the superconscious and to move forward. He says there is an absolutely still, formless field of energy we call mind. This is not conceptual. You can go there. Meditators who have gone deep understand this. You just rest in the void, in empty mind. You're there, but there are no thoughts. I think it's essential, especially in our new thought practices with the law of mind action and thinking about ourselves as magnets and recognizing the mind as like a little craving aversion machine, like a computer. It's so essential to have an underbody of that practice with the empty mind and the silence and the sacred and an understanding of the superconscious mind. If you have never experienced that mind or experienced it consciously, the silence, My first time experiencing it was with yoga. And I think, my understanding of myself was that I'm probably someone that just has a little too much movement to get there just by sitting, Now I can, but earlier in my years, I couldn't. There was a lot always going on in this mind, like this mind. It still has a lot going on all the time. But the first time I recognized it was quiet was after an exhausting yoga class. And we were in Savasana. And I was just like, this experience of spaciousness took over. And it couldn't have been too long because there was, then me popping back in there going, nothing was happening. For a second, that was the quietest I've ever heard that. And I realized, what? And then it was I wanted to practice some more of that. Because and it was just this real epiphany, this mind, I have not witnessed that. Not that it hadn't happened before. But sometimes for some of us, it takes physical activity. It takes getting the body a little bit tired. And in fact, that's some of the beginnings of yoga, was just to prepare you for meditation. But we tend to think, I'm not a meditator, or I don't know the silence, or I don't have time for it, or whatever it is, but we just haven't found our mode yet. So consider your mode of silence. And if you haven't found it yet, don't guess that it's not there. It is. It maybe it's in a temple, maybe it's in a sanctuary, maybe it's by a lake, maybe it's after yoga, maybe it's after reading a book, maybe it's staring into the eyes of your child, but it's there. Keep looking. The silence. Completely quiet, completely empty. He says it's like a powerful computer that has no software on it. The computer has great potential, but it doesn't do anything. That is what empty mind is. I took a trip to Africa a number of years ago, and I remember just being so excited and thinking, I'm going to be journaling and writing songs and doing so much, and this is just going to be all these. Went on a safari, and what I experienced there was a wild state of empty mind. I still don't know why. It may be, we're so inundated with lights and fluorescent lights and waves and, all this stuff. If you're a scientist in this room, if you have a radio conductor thing, you can pick up on a lot of stuff that none of us are paying attention to, right? But I'm in the middle of Africa, in the middle of the desert, looking at giraffes and lions and zebras, thinking I'd be thinking a lot and feeling a lot. And it was just days on end. And I started to resist it. It was almost a downer. This is too exciting for there to be some sort of meditative silence in my mind. I'm ready to take pictures and write songs and be inspired in the way that only an American probably traveling in Africa wanted to be inspired. And instead, Africa gave me the gift of an extended state of mind with spaciousness. Slowed me down so much that I was aware of the one that was back here watching. Michael Singer says, you're not out there in the world, you're inside. You're way back inside. He says, in truth, consciousness is the most profound miracle, an essence that knows that it knows. Consciousness has no problem being in the present moment. This is our essence. There's nothing to be afraid of by emptying the mind. He goes on to talk about what we do when we want to either placate our cravings and aversion, the butterflies and the rattlesnakes, or to resist the empty mind. We go to activities, we keep the TV on, we go to drinking, to drugs, to whatever it is, anything that can kind of mute this and keep homeostasis, like keep it the same, because I don't want to let those things in and through me. I don't want to just breathe through them and allow them to show up at the door and leave. I need to control it. I need to make sure I have less rattlesnakes and more butterflies. And the gift is to recognize that you are the jar without the lid, that you are the net that doesn't catch, that you are the fish hook that has food on it. The human mind is an amazing thing. You're back in there, deep inside, and you have the use of a brilliant mind. That said, what is the average human doing with their mind? Einstein uses mind to ponder thought experiments about the behavior of light, gravity, and the physics of outer space, even though no human had ever been there. Meanwhile, you keep your mind busy with relationships, what people think of you, and how to get you what you want and avoid what you don't want. You may not have Einstein's mind, but you might. But compared to any other living things on earth, your mind is brilliant. The question is not whether your mind is brilliant. The question is, what are you doing with that brilliance? Namaste. So let's take ourselves into some time of meditation, just breathing for a moment, stepping apart for a while, closing the eyes, just allowing our beings to metabolize whatever came up for us today as being spiritual nourishment. Not having to grasp it like a butterfly or resist something like a rattlesnake, but just allowing it to flow through us like spiritual food, spiritual nourishment. Awakening every cell, every muscle, every tissue, every organ, every function of this body temple. Awakening all the aspects of mind, the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, the superconscious mind. Breathing into the one that's watching. The observer, the one that knows that it knows that it knows. Where it is, whose it is, what it is, that it's back there. Inhaling and exhaling. Singer says, the truth is, life is not hitting your weak spots. You're projecting your weak spots onto life. I'm clearing my projector in this moment with each breath. Inhaling and exhaling, releasing the impressions from my mind that I built up from valid experiences that felt good and felt bad. I just didn't know yet what this mind could be used for. I didn't know yet how wondrously it is made. So I get up from the fall, from the garden. I unlock the energy in my mind. And I allow the silence to do what the silence does. And that is more than enough. Always, now, forever. By the power of this practice, may all beings have freedom from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings know God as love and themselves as emanations of this love. May all beings know that we are born blessed and here to be a blessing. May all beings know the empty mind. Namaste.